Hey, we live in a world where we often celebrate nonstop hustle and grinding. I am choosing a healthier rhythm. I will be modeling balance and not burnout. So the Grant Writing Made Clear show is moving from weekly to bi-weekly episodes in season 2 so I can keep episodes thoughtful, useful, and sustainable while taking care of my well-being. So be on the lookout for new episodes in season 2 every other Tuesday. Don't forget to subscribe so you are alerted when a new episode is released. Thank you so much for listening and supporting. Welcome to Grant Writing Made Clear. The truth is, the grant writing process isn't always clear, but with the right guidance, proven actionable strategies, and expert insights, the process becomes easier, simpler, and yes, clearer. I am Dr. Trinette, your host of Grant Writing Made Clear, and a former nonprofit president turned distinguished professor and behavioral scientist with 2 decades of grant writing experience. I remember what it was like to be a busy nonprofit leader with little time but big financial sustainability concerns. Over the years, I have transformed my skills from securing $1,000 foundation grants to winning multi-million-dollar federal grants. I created this podcast in response to the grant writing coaching requests I've received from nonprofit leaders, entrepreneurs, and professors over the years. Join me each week as I reveal insider strategies and share key lessons that turn wishful thinking into winning applications. Pull up a seat and get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Whether you're a beginner or a pro looking to sharpen your skills and create a life you love, you're in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Welcome back to Grant Writing Made Clear. I am your host, Dr. Trinette, and today we're talking about the document that could make or break your foundation funding dreams before you even get to write a full proposal. And guess what it's called? A letter of intent, or an LOI. For those of us who have had federal funding and are new to considering foundation funding, the LOI is completely new. So for me, my work has been funded by federal funders, and I am beginning to consider foundations, and the LOI is new. But here's what you need to know about foundation funding, and that is that it has really exploded in the last 5 years, and that many organizations are competing for foundation dollars more now than ever before because of the shifting that's happening at the federal level. And most foundations, they're not asking for full proposals like federal agencies. Most foundations would prefer LOIs first. And so usually the LOIs are required. And you really have to think about the LOI as an audition, because if you don't make it past the LOI stage, then you won't have the opportunity to apply for a full or to write a full application and apply for the grant. Most LOIs are typically 2 to 3 pages. They are single-space pages, and you have to use those 2 to 3 single-space pages to convince the foundation that your project deserves one of their limited invitation-only grant proposal slots. So again, the LOIs, known as letters of intent, are typically required prior to submitting a full application, and they only invite a select few to move forward to the application stage. I do want to provide some context regarding the foundation funding experience. So let me paint the picture of what you're up against. It is my understanding that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation gets over 3,000 LOIs every funding cycle, and there are multiple funding cycles per year. I understand that they get over 3,000 LOIs every funding cycle, and out of that pool, they maybe invite another 150 to 200 of them to submit for proposals. So that's a 95% rejection rate at the LOI stage. For some of us, we're happy about that because that means you didn't spend your entire month or two writing a grant application, but instead You wrote 2 to 3 pages, and that means less of your time. So you didn't waste a lot of your time. And so many people appreciate that you are rejected at the LOI stage without having to write the full application and then be rejected. But you still need to recognize that a lot of people are submitting LOIs. I remember recently I was looking at RWJ and I found a frequently asked question PDF that they had on one of their websites, and it indicated that they only fund 1% of the LOIs that I was considering submitting. What you should know is that foundations is a really good source of funding. I think you should be considering it, but you should also know that many foundations are receiving a lot of LOIs. LOIs are required, and they are receiving a lot of LOIs. And so it is a very competitive process. But again, if you're like me, you might be okay with submitting an LOI because 2 to 3 pages is much less than a full grant application. And so RWJ is really competitive. The Ford Foundation is similarly competitive. Gates Foundation is probably even more competitive. But before you panic and get upset or anxious about this, I want you to know that the odds are really not terrible if you understand how to write an LOI. And that's the reason why I'm doing this podcast, is just to introduce you to LOIs if you haven't heard of them before, and give you a little bit of feedback that you consider as you proceed. And so I want to share a little bit about the foundation mindset. Here's what most people don't understand. Foundation program officers are not just evaluating your project, they are also evaluating whether you followed the instructions, whether you are responsive to the funding announcement, and they are curating a portfolio. So imagine that you are responsible for investing $50 million this year across maybe 40 grants. Every project you fund needs to advance your foundation mission. It also needs to complement your other investments and be something you can defend to your board. You may have 200 LOIs as a program officer on your desk, and you may have 10 minutes per LOI for your first read through. And so what exactly are you looking for? So I want to talk to you about the project officer who is busy. They have 200 LOIs on their desk, and they only have about 10 minutes per LOI to read. What are they looking for? Let's talk about it. I've had conversations with project officers at foundations. You all know that I am a reviewer, I'm a grant reviewer for the National Institutes of Health. But again, that is federal, and I've done grant reviews for other federal agencies. So again, the LOI is new to those of you who have done federal funding and not foundations. But here's the first thing they're looking for, and the primary thing they're looking for, and that is, does the LOI follow rules? Is it responsive to the funding mechanism? So if the funding mechanism says that you can only focus on youth, that's what they're looking for. Are you focused on youth? If it says that you have to submit an application focused on 2 interventions, an intervention and a comparator intervention, and you only submit an application with 1 intervention, you're non-responsive. If it tells you that you have to use a specific font, they tell you to use Garamond size 12 and you use Georgia size 12, you're non-responsive. So the first thing they're looking for is, did you follow the rules? Are you responsive to the funding announcement? If you're not, that's an easy rejection. Friends, don't make it easy. So you have to take your time, spend a lot of time with the funding announcement before you even start writing. Spend a lot of time sitting down with it so that you know their rules. You know what they're looking for and what they're not willing to fund. Don't submit a study about developing some measure, some scale, and they want a study focused on interventions. So you have to make sure that you are being responsive. If you hear nothing else today, I want you to hear that when you are submitting these LOIs, you need to make sure you are following all of their rules. If not, it's an easy desk rejection. You will not be invited to submit a full application. The second thing they're going to be looking at, is it aligned with their priorities? So maybe they are asking you to focus on youth outcomes, but they are really interested in youth health. And so they're going to be looking, okay, is this aligned with youth outcomes? Great. They met that level. They met that benchmark, but are they also aligned with youth health? If so, you might get brownie points for that. The third thing they're looking at is your organization capable of delivering what it is you propose to deliver. So in most LOIs, there is a section where you talk about your organization's capacity. You want to do a good job writing that. You want to get to the point. We don't need to go back to when it was founded in 1900. Get to the point and say, here's what my organization has been doing, and we are capable for these particular reasons. And then the final thing I want to make a point about at this stage is the project likely to create meaningful impact? So you want to be able to sell that what you're doing is a solution to the problem. And if, when they're reading your LOI, if it comes across as unclear, or if it looks like the answer is no, they didn't follow the rules, no, it's not aligned with our priorities. If it's no to any of that, your LOI will probably go into the rejection pile. And it's not a personal thing. It's really about them managing their portfolio. They only have a certain amount of money that they need to give out, and they want to make sure that they give it to the people who they believe will do the work that they are looking for. And so this is one of the reasons why generic LOIs fail. If you write one LOI, I've seen people do this, believe it or not. They write one 3-page LOI and they send it to 10 different foundations, and they're not invited to move on to the next stage, because what you're telling the funder is, I don't really care what you're asking me to do. I don't care that you're telling me that it needs to focus on this particular thing. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? I'm going to throw spaghetti and see if something lands and something sticks. And they're not interested in that. A good program officer can read between the lines and see that, hey, this person could care less what we are interested in. They're just trying to get some money, and they're going to reject it. It's not going to move on to the next stage. So you need to take your time and make sure that you are following the rules, you're being responsive, it's aligned with their priorities, and that you are demonstrating that you're going to have good impact. I won't spend a lot of time talking about the structure of the LI because they vary for each funder, right? So one funder may want a certain thing in their LOI, another funder may want something different in their LOI. So I won't talk about that today. But what I will say is that in general, they want to see a problem statement, a proposed solution, a bit about your organization's credibility, and a bit about your budget. So you can have that in mind, that there will be some sections that are the same across funders, but each funder will ask for something different. And I do want to share briefly some of the mistakes that can really limit your potential to get funded at the LOI stage. One is, I've talked about this before, the kitchen sink approach, where you're trying to cover every single problem that exists. Every problem out there you want to cover. That's not going to work. You really have to pick one or maybe two areas to focus on, be really specific, and make a clear and compelling case for why they should fund this particular area. The generic template, I talked about that before. So having a generic template that you send to everybody, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So you need to customize the LOI for the funder. Next, many of us who are listening are humble, and I love that. I love that. I was raised to be humble. I love it. Here's the thing. In your grant writing, you can't be too humble. You can't be too humble, because foundations do not fund humble. They fund competence. So you need to be selling your competence. Okay? I want you to sell your competence. Don't go in saying, oh, we're a small organization trying to make a difference day by day. No, you want to go in and say, I am competent. I have done this. I have this, and we can get the job done, right? They don't fund humble. Okay, so you've learned about LOIs, that LOIs are really important for foundations. You understand a little bit about what LOIs contain. You understand some of the biggest mistakes people make with LOIs and the importance of alignment. And I just want to briefly share with you some action steps. The first is some homework. You all know we love homework. I want you to find one foundation that aligns with your work, study their recent grants, and draft an LOI. If you can find a current funding announcement or previous funding announcement, draft an LOI using the structure that they are expecting. You don't have to submit it, but at least practice drafting it. The instructions are there. Sometimes it may not be exactly where you're looking for it. Maybe you're looking for it in the funding announcement, and maybe they have some other template that actually tells you where the instructions are. You're going to have to dig sometimes, and that's okay. So dig, find the instructions, and I want you to write an LOI for one foundation this week. I want you to be prepared to Articulate the problem statement in one sentence. If you can explain your problem in one compelling sentence, your solution won't really matter because they're not going to understand the problem. So I want you to get accustomed to writing the problem clearly and succinctly. I want you to develop your own template. If they don't have a template, I want you to develop a template for each foundation. For this one, you're going to go in and see, okay, here are the sections they want me to write. You're going to do an outline of those sections with the major headings, maybe problem statement, maybe activities, whatever the expectations are. And then after you do your own outline, you go in and you start writing. And here's what I want you to remember. Foundations want to fund successful projects. Don't see them as adversaries. See them as people who want to partner with you, okay? So they're not trying to trip you up. They're not trying to trick you. They want to partner with you. And when you write your LOI, I want you to understand that you're not begging for money. You are presenting a solution to a problem that the funder cares about. You are their solution. So don't go in being afraid to ask for money. If you need $2 million and they say that this announcement has up to $2 million, ask for $2 million. You are a solution to a problem they care about. Your job now is to prove that you understand the problem and that you have a solution that you are capable of implementing to get the job done. We're talking confidence, we're talking clarity and alignment. That's your formula for these LOIs. Confidence, clarity, and alignment. In closing, I want you to remember that foundation funding is competitive. Foundation funding is competitive. The organizations that consistently win foundation grants understand that LOIs are about being strategic. You cannot do the generic template. It's not going to work. Okay? You can do this. I want you to jump into the homework that we talked about this week. Sit down, find one foundation, go and find a funding opportunity, write an LOI, and you decide if you want to submit it or not, but at least practice it so that you are familiar with this. And soon we can talk more about LOIs and you can go deeper, grow, and we're looking forward to you landing a foundation grant at some point. If this episode helped you understand LOIs better, share it with your network, because the more organizations that write strong LOIs, the more good work gets funded. Thank you so much for listening to Grant Writing Made Clear. I am your host, Dr. Trinette. Next week, we're diving deeper into grant writing and all the things that matter related to grant writing, be it leadership, be it self-care, be it time management, be it organization. We're talking about all the things because all the things matter in grant writing and grant success. Until we talk again, keep writing, keep strategizing, and keep opening doors to the funding your work deserves. Take good care, my friend. Thank you for listening to Grant Writing Made Clear. I hope today's episode gave you inspiration, confidence, and clear information that you can turn into action. Remember, you are not alone. There's a whole community here striving for the same impact. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a quick review to help more people find the show, and share this episode with others in your network. It really does make a difference. For more grant writing tips and resources, follow me on social media. Until next time, keep showing up, keep learning, and remain determined. I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye for now.